Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalie Chan from the International Law Division of the Department of Justice of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to please turn off your mobile phones and electronic devices. Ms. Teresa Cheng, GBS SCJP, Director General Jia Guide, Dr. Christophe BERNASCONI, eminent experts, distinguished speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the inaugural Global Conference on the 2019 HCCH Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Judgments in Civil or Commercial Matters. The conference, titled 2019 HCCH Judgments Convention, Global Enforcement of Civil and Commercial Judgments, is jointly organized by the Hague Conference on Private International Law and the Department of Justice of the Hong Kong SAR, with the support of the Asian Academy of International Law. For those who traveled to Hong Kong to participate in this conference, a very warm welcome. To start off the conference, opening remarks will be delivered by Ms. Teresa Cheng, Secretary for Justice of the Hong Kong SAR. This will be followed by opening remarks delivered by Mr. Jia Guide, Director General of the Department of Treaty and Law of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China. And lastly, by Dr. Christophe BERNASCONI, Secretary General of the Hague Conference on Private International Law. It is with great pleasure that we now invite Ms. Teresa Cheng on stage, please.
Dr. Christophe BERNASCONI, Director General Jia Guide, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome you all, in particular our visitors and friends from overseas, to this inaugural Global Conference in celebration of the successful conclusion of the 2019 HCCH Judgments Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Judgments in Civil and Commercial Matters. I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Hague Conference on Private International Law for this remarkable achievement and to thank our Asian Academy of International Law for its generous support for this conference. With the rise of cyberspace and new technologies, trade crosses borders in a split second, transforming our economy into a truly global and connected one. What has been lacking for years is a global convention to provide for judgments, recognition, and enforcement, which meets the needs of the economic developments. With the Judgments Convention, the gap is filled, and the rule of law reinforced internationally as envisioned in Goal 16 of the 2030 UN Agenda for Sustainable Development. Hong Kong has a strong and solid foundation for rule of law. The strong legal fraternity, the independent judiciary, the application of the common law, and the protection of human rights guaranteed under the Basic Law. This, some say, is put to test in the light of the recent protests and violence in parts of Hong Kong. Hong Kong has always prided itself as an inclusive society, not just for respecting different views harbored by different people, but also Hong Kong is a city that cherishes, respects, and protects the freedom of speech and expression, the right to assembly, and generally freedom not just in our acts, but also our thoughts. People from all walks of life, young and old, conservative and progressive, are free to express and exchange their views while respecting even the diametrically opposite views of others. That is the free and civilized society we all aspire to. Yet, as we all know, these rights are not absolute. Whilst enjoying the rights and freedoms that one is entitled to, one must also respect the rights of others. When these rights and freedoms are abused or misused, the free society will suffer. Where violence is resorted to, where disruptions affecting the rights and freedoms of others are inflicted, or where life and property are threatened or vandalized, the general order of the society and the well-being of its people will be adversely affected. The recent protests originate from, but by now has gone way beyond, the objections to the Hong Kong government's proposed amendments to the Fugitives Offenders Ordinance, which include safeguards based on the United Nations Model Extradition Treaty 1990. Initially, peaceful processions have taken place, but later on some of these public events have turned violent. When people overstep the limit of peaceful demonstration and resort to violence, this cannot be tolerated by the society nor permitted in law. The laws of Hong Kong, our independent prosecutorial and judicial systems will deal with these violations of law. That, however, may not adequately address the causes of conflicts. With the onset of digital communication and how research engines are designed to operate, confirmation bias becomes a prevalent mode and source of marketing and association. Views therefore become entrenched and polarized, and society divided, sometimes without any rational basis and reasons. What you have read, seen, or heard on the news or on the social media is just one piece of a complex socio-economic and political jigsaw puzzle. Though it may take time, I assure you all that it is a puzzle that the Hong Kong people will be able to resolve together. As announced by the Chief Executive last week, the Hong Kong SAR government has started a cross-sector dialogue to talk through differences and look for common ground in the spirit of healing and reconciliation. The government will reach out to the community to start a direct dialogue with people from all walks of life, with different stances and backgrounds. And it is our sincere and solemn wish to discuss grievances, issues, problems, and solutions in a rational and respectful way. The current situation in Hong Kong will subside. Hong Kong has always been resilient, and despite recent disruptions, it will further advance itself to another level through its strong legal system, solid financial infrastructure, and efforts of the citizens, and importantly, also friends of Hong Kong like all of you here today. So I thank you all for coming to Hong Kong in this very important first global conference after the Judgments Convention. Returning then, if I may, to our theme, the Judgments Convention. As rightly noted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Netherlands, His Excellency Mr. Stef Blok, during the signing ceremony of the final act of the Judgments Convention in the Great Hall of Justice in the Peace Palace, The Hague, the Judgments Convention, and I quote, enhances the legal certainty and predictability that is important in international legal matters, especially in international trade. Under the Judgments Convention, a judgment given by a court of a contracting state shall be recognized and enforced in another contracting state in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 2 of the Judgments Convention. In this relation, a judgment of the state of origin would have to meet the threshold jurisdictional conditions provided for in Articles 5 or 6 in order to be eligible for recognition or enforcement by a requested state. Such jurisdictional conditions include some familiar concepts, such as habitual residence, consent to jurisdiction, place of performance of a contractual obligation, etc. A judgment that satisfies Articles 5 or 6, nevertheless, may be refused recognition or enforcement on those limited grounds provided for in Article 7, which include the traditional grounds such as lack of due process, policy, and fraud. While the Judgments Convention only deals with the jurisdictional basis that a court of the requested state will accept as legitimate grounds for the purpose of recognition or enforcement, but not the question of whether a court of a state of origin should exercise jurisdiction, we understand that there is a plan for a further meeting of an experts group to address these matters relating to direct jurisdiction. There is thus unfinished business, difficult though it may be, but I am sure that we will all be able to put this into fruitful conclusion. There has been discussions that the Judgments Convention has the potential of having the same impact as the New York Convention on the recognition and enforcement of foreign arbitral awards. The first challenge, of course, is for all the states to perhaps follow suit from what Uruguay has done, and that is to join the convention. Besides that, given the scope of declarations and exclusions provided for in the Judgments Convention, it would be important for the success of the Judgment Conventions as a global, unified framework in recognition and enforcement of judgments across borders that the contracting states are restrained in resorting to such declarations or exclusions. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region is most privileged to contribute to the deliberations of the Judgments Convention. Since 1998, representatives of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, as members of the Chinese delegation, have taken part in the Hague Conference Judgment Project, which gave birth not only to the present Judgment Convention, but of course also the Choice of Court Agreements Convention in 2005. Working closely with our counterparts in the central government and Macau SAR, we participated actively in the discussions and the drafting of these two conventions, putting in the common law perspective. We are also very honored with the support of the central government. The informal working group 2 and group 4 under the Judgments Project took place in Hong Kong in February this year. We are pleased that these meetings have contributed to the final conclusion of the Judgments Convention. And before concluding my remarks, I would also like to pay tribute to the Hague Conference's Judgments Project for its helpful guidance to Hong Kong's bilateral arrangements with the mainland China on reciprocal enforcement of judgments and in civil and commercial matters. In January this year, Hong Kong and the mainland entered into an arrangement on the reciprocal recognition and enforcement of judgments in civil and commercial matters between the courts of the mainland and the Hong Kong SAR, which this particular arrangement was modeled on the advanced draft of the Judgments Convention. The close resemblance between the now concluded convention and the Hong Kong and mainland arrangement in various aspects are easily discernible. There is, however, one marked difference. The Hong Kong mainland arrangement covers some of the IP-related judgments. For instance, the arrangement covers judgments on contractual disputes involving IP rights and also tortious claims for infringement of certain IP rights. In the arrangement, we adopted the definition of IP rights in the meaning of intellectual property as stipulated in Article 1.2 of the TRIPS agreement. This conference today brings together experts in private international law from various parts of the world, most of whom were directly involved in the policy formulation, drafting, and negotiation of the Judgments Convention. They will no doubt provide us with useful insights, critical analysis, and much food for thought. We will gain a great deal of deeper understanding of the Judgments Convention and its important role in facilitating cross-border recognition and enforcement of judgments. We in Hong Kong welcome all of you from overseas, and we are indeed most honored and very pleased to be able to host this very first inaugural global conference after the conclusion of the Judgments Convention, with a view to spread the good news and also with a view to encouraging more and wider adoption of the convention for the greater international rule of law angle. On this note, may I wish this inaugural global conference every success, and for those coming from overseas, an enjoyable stay in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cheng. May we now invite Mr. Jia Guide on stage, please.
Honorable Secretary of Justice, Teresa CHENG, Honorable Secretary General of HCCH, Dr. BERNASCONI, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Chinese government, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the distinguished guests to this conference. As you are aware, there have been protests, demonstrations, and violence over the recent months in Hong Kong, surrounding the proposed bill to amend 2 ordinances relating to the transfer of fugitives. A small fraction of extremists continue to resort to an increased intentional violence, even though the chief executive has declared to withdraw the bill. Such acts of violence seriously undermines the rule of law and the public order in Hong Kong. The fact that this inaugural global conference opens today as scheduled is an expression of the Hong Kong government's commitment to the rule of law. The central government understanding and support to the Hong Kong HCCH government, and also the international community's confidence in the rule of law in Hong Kong. I would like to express my special thanks to the Department of Justice of Hong Kong HCCH, HCCH, and its Asia Pacific Regional Office, and the Asian Academy of International Law as well, for their thoughtful and meticulous arrangement and valuable support. As the theme of the conference is a convention on the global recognition and enforcement of foreign judgment in civil and commercial matters, I would like to begin by sharing some of my reflections on the convention. First, it is a fine model of multilateralism. The world is undergoing profound changes unseen in a century. The trends for peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit remain robust. Yet we are facing the countercurrent of protectionism and unilateralism. The adoption of the convention at this very moment is a victory of multilateralism because it carries with it the extraordinary hard work and contribution of generations of private international law practitioners. It brings together the collective strength and wisdom of over 400 delegates from some 70 states. And it is a manifestation of the willingness of all the state parties to pursue multilateral approach and to tackle common challenges. It is a fruit of the international community's collaborative efforts under the banner of multilateralism. Second, it is a golden key to facilitate the global circulation of judgments. The Convention provides for the scope and conditions for the recognition and enforcement of foreign judgment in a comprehensive and systematic manner. It represents the greatest common denominator for cooperation among the state parties in this area. At the same time, the Convention provides for a series of flexible mechanisms, such as declaration, to accommodate to the greatest extent the interests and concerns of all state parties and the differences among legal systems. I therefore have every reason to believe that the Convention will become a golden key to open the door to the cooperation with respect to the recognition and enforcement of judgment in civil and commercial matters, and that it will bring about bright prospect for the free circulation of judgments among the state parties. Third, it is a milestone in the rules-making process for international civil and commercial matters. The adoption of the Convention will have far-reaching impact to the future. It is the first international instrument to establish the universal rules for the international circulation of judgments. It signifies the success of international efforts to create international judicial cooperation regime in this field. The Convention, together with the New York Convention and Singapore Convention on Mediation, encompass litigation, arbitration, and mediation. They jointly constitute the troika in international civil and commercial dispute resolution mechanisms. This will provide more comprehensive and higher standard judicial protection for international civil and commercial activities, which will add strong momentum to the robust development of these activities. Ladies and gentlemen, to cite a famous quote from Shakespeare, what's past is prologue. We should congratulate ourselves on the adoption of the Convention. We also share the responsibility to work for the future of the Convention. Firstly, we should strive for the universal acceptance of the Convention. The future success of the Convention relies heavily on it being accepted by all countries. This requires more research and promotion by the academia and government officials to increase the state parties' willingness to strengthen international cooperation on the basis of this convention. And I understand this is the very reason why we are here today. By so doing, more countries will consider positively to accede to the convention. In September 2017, China signed the Convention on Choice of Court Agreements. We are now undertaking internal legal procedure for its ratification. As one of the main parties to the negotiation of the Judgment Convention, China will conduct an active study on the issue of joining the Convention. Secondly, we should make sure that the Convention brings about benefits to all the people. The Convention is a helpful safeguard to the circulation of civil and commercial judgments by preventing and properly settling civil and commercial disputes. It will provide a sound rule of law environment for business-to-business and people-to-people interaction. This matches squarely with the goals of building a community of shared future for mankind, and that of the Belt and Road Initiative, as proposed by Chinese President Xi Jinping. China is committed to strengthening international judicial cooperation with all countries, including the cooperation under this convention, to further the development of Belt and Road Initiative and to promote the building of a shared future for mankind. Thirdly, we should support a greater role by HCCH. The adoption of the convention is another showcase of the potentials of HCCH against the new issues and new challenges. The HCCH is constantly adapting itself to the needs of time and is adapted at discovering and solving new problems. By setting up a bridge for the different legal cultures, the HCCH helps the states overcome the barriers between different jurisprudence. And by formulating consensual rules, the HCCH facilitates international interaction. China will continue to work with HCCH so that we can facilitate cooperation with all countries through this platform to address common challenges and build a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, choosing Hong Kong as an inaugural global conference for the convention is what we in Chinese would say, doing the right thing at the right time, the right place, and by the right people. In terms of timing, this conference takes place shortly after the adoption of the convention, Hence, the conference picked up the right momentum. In terms of place, Hong Kong integrates the cultural and legal traditions of both the West and the East, and is working toward a regional hub for legal and dispute resolution services. The conference covers a wide range of issues relating to the convention, and it brings together the right people, experts in the field of private international law. I'm confident that you will bring to the conference your wisdom and insights, which will continue to the development of the convention. The traditional Chinese festival, Mid-Autumn Festival, is around the corner. This festival symbolizes family reunion, harmony, and happiness. May I take this opportunity to wish you all the best, the conference a great success. And a moment ago, I shared my personal observation with Secretary General BERNASCONI. I said, Hong Kong has the best mooncake in the world. I hope also that Hong Kong will restore law and order, and it will have a more brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jia. May we now invite Dr. Christophe BERNASCONI on stage, please.
Honorable Madam Secretary CHENG, Honorable Director General Jia, distinguished moderators and speakers, dear guests and participants, a wholehearted welcome to you all to this inaugural global conference on the 2019 HCCH Judgments Convention. Exactly 69 days after its adoption. Now, it is my understanding that the number 69 in itself does not have a special meaning in Chinese culture. But I know that the number 6 means smooth, and the number 9, longevity and even eternity. Definitely, all characteristics I like being associated with our new convention. And so, at the outset, I wish to extend my sincere thanks to Madam CHENG, Secretary for Justice of the Hong Kong SAR, not just for the timeliness of this conference, but indeed for hosting this significant event here in Hong Kong. We are delighted to be here. Thank you, Mr. Jia, Director General of the Department of Treaty and Law at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China, for your kind words of introduction and welcome, and of course your belief in and support of the Judgments Convention. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation to the People's Republic of China and to the Department of Justice of the Hong Kong SAR for generously organizing this first global event on the promotion of the newest HCCH convention. We are acutely aware of how much effort and work has gone into organizing this high-level conference in such a short period of time. Finally, I would also like to thank the Asian Academy of International Law for their support of this significant event. Now, let me start my comments with a quote. The enforcement of foreign judgments, the conditions to be stipulated, in short, all that relates to this topic gives rise to so many considerations of different natures that, in order to obtain the necessary agreement of multiple states in this regard, it is important to avoid any bias and, where necessary, make concessions regarding special clauses, all the while upholding the fundamental principles. By approving only that which one considers to be the perfect system, we are at risk of having nothing to show for it. I believe that a convention based on an international understanding of the rules of jurisdiction, the principal formalities of the proceedings, and conflict of laws would form the core of a judicial union which, without undermining the sovereignty or autonomy of each state, would remove the obstacles stemming from differences of nationality which hinder the administration of justice. End of the quote. This could be an extract from a delegation's opening statement made at our diplomatic session a little more than 2 months ago. Well, it isn't. In fact, this was written 150 years ago by Tobias Assel, dreaming about a future judgments convention. It took some time, probably a little more than Assel had envisaged, but here we are. Such a judgments convention finally exists. During the opening session of the 22nd diplomatic session of the Hague Conference in June, I equally encouraged the delegates to commit to the negotiation, to work towards a sound and meaningful consensus so as to contribute to the groundbreaking moment that was about to take place in the field of international dispute resolution. Indeed, it was a true collective effort, those in attendance demonstrating a real willingness and commitment to engage constructively in the discussions and negotiations. And the rest is, as they say, history. On the 2nd of July 2019, we witnessed the adoption of the 40th global instrument of the HCCH, the 2019 Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Judgments in Civil or Commercial Matters. It was a success not only because we were able to agree on the text of the convention itself, though of course that was no mean feat, as the work had started almost 30 years ago as part of an admittedly wider project. But had we not been able to reach a meaningful agreement, much of that work, we feared, would have been lost for a generation. But we did succeed, and the new convention provides what we have been aiming for: legal certainty and predictability, risk mitigation, and ultimately cost-efficient and meaningful relief and effective access to justice for parties involved in cross-border litigation. As I said during the diplomatic session, the Judgments Convention is a game changer for cross-border dispute settlement. Together with the 2005 Convention on Choice of Court Agreements, the Judgments Convention will radically improve the effectiveness of judicial litigation as a means to settle cross-border disputes, to increase access to justice, and to facilitate international trade, commerce, and of course, mobility in an era when these are perhaps more important than ever. As such, the Judgments Convention, together with the 2005 Choice of Court Convention, will provide another viable option in the suite of international dispute resolution mechanism. Together, as expressed already by Director General Chia, these conventions have the potential to create an effective and efficient regime that is to judicial litigation what the New York Convention is to arbitration. The fact to have an effective choice will undoubtedly benefit individuals and companies alike. The successful completion of this mission would not have been possible without the hard work, active participation, and commitment of the HCCH members and their experts. Some of them are here with us today. Mr. Andreas Stein from the European Commission, Mr. Marcos Totas Alguero from Uruguay, Mr. Marcelo Denardi from Brazil, Mr. Sun Xiaofei from China, Mr. Keisuke Takeshita from Japan, Mrs. Emma Borges from the UK, Mr. Peter Arndt Nielsen from Denmark, Professor Yoon-Hok Yang from Korea, Mrs. Christina Ferreira from Macau SAR, Mrs. Cara North from Australia, who as external consultant so effectively assisted our dear chair, David Goddard QC from New Zealand. And of course, our generous hosts for this conference, Dr. James Ding and Peter Wong. a very heartfelt thanks to you all, as well as to your colleagues who have worked on this project so hard for many years and for making the journey here, some of you from quite far, to share with us your views on the new convention. And yet, as important as it is to celebrate the achievements to date, our work, of course, does not stop here. This event, in fact, launches a new phase of the project, that of the promotion of the convention. As I stressed during the closing ceremony of the diplomatic session, our success will not be measured in form of a final act that features plenty of impressive signatures. The true measure of our success will be what happens in the coming months and years. When will the convention enter into force? How many states will have become parties in, say, 3, 5, 10 years' time? When will we have enough contracting parties to plan or even hold a first special commission on the practical operation of the convention? I sincerely hope it won't take the 6.1 years that it has taken the other core conventions of the HCCH on average just to enter into force. I hope that it won't take the 11.9 years that it has taken the other core conventions of the HCCH on average to reach the level of 20 contracting parties. I hope it won't take the 27.1 years that it has taken the other core conventions of the HCCH on average to reach the level of 50 contracting parties. Never mind the 35.1 years it has taken 3 of these conventions, apostille, abduction, and adoption, to reach the milestone of 100 contracting parties. This work is simply too important for such delays. After such much effort and commitment, I do hope that things will move faster than ordinarily. It is against this background that we are delighted to be here today and to have had the Hong Kong SAR take the lead in launching the global promotion of the convention. By hosting this conference, you are providing the first real opportunity to discuss its benefits and showcase them to the world. With the list of distinguished speakers gathered for this conference, I have no doubt that the discussions will be both comprehensive and thought-provoking. I'm confident that this will only be the first of a series of promotional events bringing the convention to the attention of stakeholders across the globe. Events like this will instill us with confidence that the pickup rate will be faster than usual. The Permanent Bureau will do its part in promoting and selling the convention, but we need you, the states, judiciaries, practitioners, academics, to join us for this important journey. Today's event kickstarts a conversation which no doubt will continue to unfold globally. And on that note, I wish us all a very successful and interesting conference. Thank you. But before we move on, I am very pleased to invite you to a film premiere, or rather a video premiere, the video of the 22nd diplomatic session that has just been finalized, well, yesterday actually, to be quite honest. But I hope you will get the sense of the commitment of the participating members during the diplomatic session. And the video you will see is also testimony to the fact that the sun can actually shine over The Hague. Thank you very much, and I hope you will enjoy it.